It's
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teamwork a Better Way podcast. I'm Christian Napier, joined by the man, and I don't know what color of blue is that? Kind of a powder blue? No, it's a
it's
little
some
darker than
blue.
that.
I don't know what it is, but I'm
It's some
having
blue, but it's
technical
very, very
problems.
nice, Spencer. Spencer Horn, how you doing?
I'm fabulous. How are you doing, Christian?
I'm doing well, and congratulations once again battling the LinkedIn technology gods here at the last minute to get us all connected.
What the heck? I'm sorry. All our listeners, we had to do a last minute login and then I had it up on my computer. So fail today. Forgive me for that.
It's all good, but we're not failing because we have an amazing guest, Spencer, to talk
Yes, we
about a
do.
super important topic. So, Spencer, why don't you go ahead and introduce her?
Yeah, I mean, today we are talking about microstress and just the impacts of that. And yesterday I was talking to one of the most amazing people that I happen to know, and I did not realize all her expertise in this area of stress. And I'm like, we can't be talking about this without that kind of level of expertise. And so she graciously agreed to join us, and that's none other than the amazing Lindsay Van Sickle. And so I want to share our listeners a little bit about Lindsay. Lindsay and I met through the National Speakers Association. I know you met her as well here, and you know what? She's just an incredible individual. She's a great leader, entrepreneur. But I'm going to read a little bit about her bio because I want you to know a little bit more about her expertise. And she's a certified burnout speaker. So she speaks to businesses around the country, and she knows what it's like to live under immense pressure and sees how the stresses of our day block productivity and passion. And it's so true. Her keynotes and hands on focus of life's unsaid, those little unsaids, are the real cause of burnout. And to help professionals get back to their original passion is really one of her passions. So, Lindsay is the author of The Black Book, and she serves on the board of the National Speakers Association. I'm so excited to have her on our board of National Speakers Association Mountain West chapter. She is a passionate wife and a mama to four. So awesome, and has a love of speaking and outdoor adventures with her family. And they have a dog named Cubby, who is really more of a rug than a dog. Do you never take him on those outdoor adventures, or her?
We do. We take him out in the mountains right by us, and oh, he loves it. He lounges around.
Well, welcome, Lindsay. We are so glad to have you. So, tell us a little bit about this black book that you have called The Black Book.
Well, thanks for having me on. I love working and being with you too. Well, the Black Book, it's all about micro stress. I've been so excited we're talking about micro stress because it's these little things every day that we don't acknowledge, right? That's micro stresses, someone saying something to us or feeling a certain way. And after a while, those things are what pile up. And the Black Book is designed to release all of those, to acknowledge the micro stresses before they get so heavy, all that heaviness of stress, right?
Wow, that's so.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Christian.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, what really prompted this discussion was an article that appeared recently in Harvard Business Review by Rob Cross and Karen Dillon that's focused on microstress. And I wasn't really familiar with it. I mean, we've all heard about stress, but this thing called microstress, it was kind of a new thing to me. And now that we have the author of the Black Book that talks about this, I'm really curious, in your opinion, in your view, Lindsay, what's the difference between the two? What's the difference between what is a microstress and what's the difference between quote unquote microstress and regular stress?
Well, do you ever feel just the pressure that's built up and like that we were just talking about, or you're just like, I feel really stressed out or maybe anxious, but you say, nothing huge has happened in my life. Nobody died, nothing. I don't know why I feel this way. Like we want some big reason. right? Those would be those big stressors in our life. A parent getting divorced, losing a close friend, a major illness. We all go through a lot of these things, but what about all of those just little day-to-day things, those unsaids, like we said, because it really is the things we don't say that over time build up and build up, and you can start to feel like you're holding these closet doors shut that are just bursting. That's how real those micro stresses can be when not looked at.
Well, I mean, I love that it's just something that we're normally not paying attention to. I mean, and a lot of people
Right.
that are high performers, and I know you and your husband as entrepreneurs are managing businesses, and you just kind of go through the day grinding and doing what's expected of you, and it's like, well, that's just what we got to do. We've got to deal with the challenges, and you're, entrepreneurs, you're the boss, but what about those stresses that come from caring and worrying about your people and making sure that they have enough hours, that they have, that you're developing them, that you're helping them to succeed. I mean, those are little things that you carry and that you worry about. And you think, well, that's no big deal. That's part of my job. But those little things start to add up. I remember Lindsay and Christian. One of the things that Lindsay and I bonded over a little bit is our joint association with a company called Rapport Leadership, where I used to work there for 7.5 years and was the CEO. And I remember taking over in that role as the CEO, and I was the boss, but I don't think I really realized over a year and a half, all of those micro stresses starting to add up. And it had a negative impact on my health, on my mental well being, on my family, on my employees, because it's circular. I mean, it creates impacts throughout the entire organization and team and everybody that associates with us. And I remember my wife saying, she's just praying that something would happen for me to leave, and something did happen. And Lindsay, when I left, I had all of a sudden I had this time, and I started mountain biking, and I felt guilty. I felt, my gosh, I'm taking time for myself, which I hadn't done in years. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, I could start to think, and ideas started coming to me, and I was like, I need to do this more, because I didn't realize how much stress I was under. And I think a lot of high performing, hardworking people this happens to, they just don't realize, because it isn't that big thing that you talked about, a loss of, a job, or a loved one, or something happened major in their life. It's just little things every single day that over time really add up.
Oh, they do. That's a perfect example and story. I think we all find ourselves all of a sudden, how did I get here? We don't know what happened, and we feel the tension and we're not ourselves, and it takes a little while to get out of it, but it's such a hopeful place to be when there's such simple things we can do in those places, and to know that we're totally normal, right? We're all here to experience life, experience these pains, and the pains, those really aren't the problem. We all go through them and feel them. It's more the ideas behind them and the letting them build up,
So you talk about pain. So why is it that pain feels so bad? What?
right?
Why
It's
is
so
that?
it's so uncomfortable. Well, I like to think of pain as a sign. Pain is a sign of something coming up to be looked at, to be felt. It's showing us an area where we can bridge the gap between pain and move over to power if we're willing to go there and see what the pain is showing us.
Yeah. Well, I'm
So,
hoping you're going to tell us how we're going to do that a little later.
yeah, I'm like, I will tell you right now if you want.
I would like to know that, but I would actually like to understand from you a little bit, Lindsay, how you came about this. I mean, was this something that you had focused on for your entire career? Was it a situation where I'm going through life, I'm killing it, I'm doing what I'm doing, but man, I'm struggling and I'm burned out. I'm tired. Like, how did you arrive at this place where you decided, I'm going to focus here on this microstress thing. I'm going to write a book about it. I'm going to tackle this subject and I'm going to help people.
I'll tell you what happened. I had a lot of my life where I would be super motivated, push hard, and just crash over and over and over. And I got to a spot when it was in my late 20s. I had lived most of my life without letting myself really feel most of what was going on, or even significant traumas, small traumas, those things, those unsaids that build up. Like people wonder, well, where do these unsaids come from? Like they start from childhood, not being picked for a team, not feeling yourself, having problems with a friend, right? And then we don't look at these things, and I hadn't looked at them, and I got to be a teenager and had a lot bigger things happening. And as an adult, the pressure and the weight that built up was just so high. I remember sitting on my bed one day about 10 years ago. My legs are crossed, my journal's sprawled open on my lap, and I'm just planning to write in my journal these boring, mundane details of life. I had a couple kids at that time. I could hear them running around the house. But those pressures, everything that had just built up. I mean, every day I felt like I woke up and I just put this mask on. This mask that just said, everything's fine, life's great. I'm just going to go about things like normal. But what's happening inside? I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling depression. I'm feeling all those unsaids. And that day, I could tell that if I kept going down this same path of just pushing it all away, like is so tempting to do because it's painful, it's uncomfortable, I could tell I was going to end up in the same place I was. And I wasn't, I had run this, it had run its course. I was miserable. And I don't know if that's exactly why, but I told myself, I'm going to say whatever this is, whatever, all this tension I can feel, all this stress, I'm just going to get it all out. I'm going to just say whatever comes. I don't know what it'll be. I told myself, it'll be fine. I'll just tear it all up, but first I got up off of the bed. I tiptoed over the bedroom door. I like peeked out, make sure the kids weren't watching. I locked the bedroom door. It felt so like just it felt scandalous to look at the things that I was feeling, what was really going on. And I got back to my bed and I just scribbled out all those the frustrations, the things that felt so unjust, the things I wished were different. Everything that I had always said, no, Lindsay, that's not okay to feel. Push it away. Everything I was so mad and so frustrated and so angry about. I let it go. I got it all out. I scribbled it. It was 3 pages, front and back. And then I tore it into teeny little pieces, ripped it all up, and peeked out the door again, took it to my outside garbage. And I threw it all in there. And at the time, I didn't think any much of it. I felt a little bit of relief though. And looking back, that is the time in my life when things started to change. I don't know if you can imagine for somebody who never validated themselves, never acknowledged anything that was going on, to suddenly give myself permission, like what we're talking about here, to just say it all, to just get it out instead of pushing it away, to stop fearing it. It all started to loosen its grip on me, and the stress started to release. A couple days later, of course, I felt that the pressure again, the anxiety, and I grabbed for that journal again. I shredded through a few more pages of it. I switched to cheap notebooks eventually, and then a few years later, I created this black book because I was finally free. With that permission, I started to feel myself, to feel happy, to feel confident. It was all of the things I feared that had their hold on me, not any of the pain, not anything that had really happened.
Why do you think, Lindsay, that and I know that people who are listening are relating to what you're saying, and I certainly do, that we allow those feelings to build up and just ignore them? I mean, what's going on there, do you think?
Well, think about our society. When we're going through a struggle, it's immediately like, what's the first words that come into your mind, either of you, when you think of going through something hard in life?
Well, just deal with it, man up, or if you're talking to a guy,
Yeah.
right? Just push through, and it's going to get better, or we'll get through this.
Yeah. Or yeah, get through it, hurry and finish it, move past it, let it go. Or, sometimes we think, what's wrong with me? And so we've learned from a young age, like, avoid pain. Pain is bad. And so, but what if it's not the pain so much as those feelings of it being bad, of it being wrong, something we don't want to experience? One of my favorite things I love to think about is, like, are either of you roller coaster fans?
Love
Are
roller
you okay?
coaster. Yeah.
When I was
Okay.
younger, yeah.
When you're,
Now
yeah,
So I go
I'm happy to
the
watch children on roller coasters.
so the I just
Have a
was
yes,
great
on I
time,
was just
kids.
on the I just went on the Accreta coaster a couple weeks ago, but my favorite is the Velociraptor at um, in Orlando, the Universal Studios. It's pretty
that's
amazing.
scary roller coaster. Oh, I love it
Keep
too.
my hands up the entire time. My arms are sore
Yes.
because there's a lot of G's, man.
I love them too. My very favorite is Everest. Do you like that one at Animal Kingdom
I haven't been on
in Disney
Everest.
World? Okay, well, you get to the top, and all of a sudden, the whole track is gone. Like, it doesn't look like it's gone. It's gone. And then the car, you think you're about to go off the edge, and then all of a sudden you start going backwards, and you, like, shoot up this massive hill, and there's this big drop, and you go down. And what is everybody doing? Everybody's just, like, screaming in delight, loving it. Just, we're all living our best lives, right? But, like, what if sometimes some of the things that we experience here in this life that feel so painful or that are such a struggle, like, what if it was a little bit more like the roller coaster? It's a big drop, but we're just riding it and then it's over. We don't get off the roller coaster and just be, that was so stressful. I need to relive this. What does this say about me? I love, like, the emotions, the feelings. I love to just picture them, like, I'm going over the roller coaster and I'm letting it go. I'm feeling it. It doesn't say anything. Or like a wave just crashing over you from the ocean. You feel it, and before you know it, it's gone. Because we aren't meant to carry that heaviness about anything that we go through, about the things that we experience. Those are the experiences our soul craves. It's not something bad.
Oh, now it was my turn to get stepped on, Spencer. Thank you very much for that. I'm actually curious from both your perspectives, your life experiences, Lindsay and Spencer. When you were having these pileups of micro stresses and you just weren't feeling right, uh, how did that not just impact you emotionally and physically, but did that have impacts on others? Whether it was your family, people that you worked with on your team, etc. How did those micro stresses kind of manifest themselves over time in your life, not just internally, but also, with the people that were around you?
Well, they took
Lindsay,
up
you
all
want to
the
go?
space. What was that, Spencer?
I say you go first.
Oh, me. Okay. It took up all that space, and so there wasn't a clearness, a clarity to bring in more of what I wanted. I felt very stuck, very shut down. I couldn't reach my business goals, not because I wasn't capable, but because all the space was taken. And when I was with people that I wanted to enjoy being with, coworkers, my husband, my kids. I felt like I couldn't be present because that was always in my head, on my mind. In fact, the very, very first step, I believe, to being more engaged with the people you're with, to feeling more confident, to having a clear mind, is looking at those unsaids and acknowledging them. That's what will free your mind. Like, there's some real power.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Christian, I'm going to share just two examples from clients, and one was from a this project manager that had a team of 5 people, and she cared about these 5 people very much. She was a great manager. I mean, part of the microstress was just the anxiety of protecting her team from some of the other members of leadership, and so that took up some of her mental space, and there came an opportunity for her to perhaps get a promotion so that she could be in a role that would actually help her to protect her team even more. I mean, this is how she was thinking. And so those were micro stresses that were building up. The problem was is that she was more concerned about being so behaving in a certain way that she ended up not getting the job because she wasn't willing to get a little more uncomfortable. She was already experiencing the stress, and she just felt like if I just be the best manager I could possibly be, then it's going to work out for me. And and she didn't really address a lot of the stress that was happening, and that prevented her from thinking clearly. And I'll talk about why that happens in just a second. And another client of mine, this was a healthcare provider, and the nurses were impacted by a doctor that would come in, brilliant doctor, but he would come in on with different moods every single day. So none of the team knew what to expect, and it created a tremendous amount of anxiety. So the nurses started putting a secret signal on the board, where they have all the patients and the rooms that they're in. There was a little signal that they would put in that all the nurses would look at to know what kind of day it was going to be based on the mood of the doctor, so that they could be prepared for that and deal with that stress. Well, eventually those stresses build up, and that doctor ended up having to go, but it had an incredible impact, a negative impact on the productivity of that team. And they had to go through a major transformation to get through it. But now they are just absolutely thriving. But at that time, Christian, it was terribly impacting their productivity, just how they worked together, how they felt about each other. And then they would take those feelings home, as Lindsay was talking about. It impacted their family. Here's just a little example of a microstress, right? So if you're watching, great. If you're listening, this is from the Harvard Business Review. And the example is Rita receives a late day email request from a new manager. Well, then she gets excited about that in terms of more anxious than excited. So she's got to deal with this email. So she spends 2 hours of her evening alerting her team about this work request. The team has to get on it. They spend 20 hours after work hours getting everything ready to meet the new boss's demands because they don't know what he's going to be like. And then Rita's team is complaining to her about the new boss. And that's the secondary ripple. The tertiary ripple is Rita is short with her husband after her stressful commute, and all kinds of things. She skips dinner with her son, so she misses out on family time because she's fulfilling the requirements of her boss. She's worrying about neglecting her family. That builds up, and other team members are experiencing similar things. So it has a ripple effect that goes on and on and on, Christian.
It's like the butterfly effect. Remember that movie?
I do.
Yeah, some small thing ends up creating a huge issue. So, what do we do about it? I mean, okay, so we have these micro stresses. Is it just as simple, Lindsay, as writing it all out on pieces of paper and then shredding them up and throwing them in the trash? Or, what can be done to alleviate this kind of pressure that we're all feeling? Because I think this is something that we are all dealing with. It's not, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not living like the happy-go-lucky, everything's hunky-dory, rainbows and unicorns kind of life. This message really resonates with me, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it. So, okay, I'm in this position. I'm feeling that stress. I'm ready to whip out my proverbial journal and start writing stuff out. Is that going to cure it for me, or are there other things that I need to look at? Maybe, Spencer, you talked about you got outside, you started mountain biking, you started exercising, you started doing things. What are some of those things that we can do to kind of alleviate this acute pressure that we're feeling from these micro stresses, and B, preventive measures that will allow us to maintain ourselves in a good state without allowing these micro stresses to just accumulate again?
Right. Well, there's a lot of ways to go about it, right? And Spencer going in the outdoors, me with writing, with other things. The big key, really, when you're in a lot of stress, to feel more powerful, to feel more yourself, is that permission piece. Are you feeling things? And it might not be in writing. Are you able to sit quietly with yourself? Are you able to take moments in nature or in your room, or and to ask yourself, what if everything fell away today, what would I still be doing? It's those sorts of the questions, the quiet meditation, the being with yourself, the feeling what's really going on in your life that will start to release it, because you're there with it instead of the avoiding. You're finding that permission. If the shred writing resonates with you, that's what I do most mornings to really acknowledge. But I like to be in thought. I like to feel, to go in nature. I know my mom, a huge thing she does is she goes on long walks, and she'll like yell at the end of uh, this this empty cul-de-sac. A coworker that I know of, she loves to just get it out in her car when she's alone. How are you going to give yourself permission, rather than pushing away and ignoring?
Those are great ideas. And I mean, I think one of the other causes of a microstress is taking on too much. There are some people who want to help be a team player. And so when somebody is not doing their job, they're stepping in and filling that gap. So one of the ways to prevent that microstress from building up is to learn how to say no and to be comfortable with that. And that's hard for some people to not
Yeah.
be that. I feel like I'm not being a team player, right, Christian? You're like, hey, somebody's not doing their. It's just going to take me an extra 15 minutes. I'll just step in and do it. But the problem is that happens again and again and again, because the more you do that, the more you're empowering your team to let you do that. And so learning
Yeah.
how to say no and letting them step up will be uncomfortable, but it will empower you to make sure that that stress is not building up, because it'll get to a point where it'll blow if you don't if you don't say no and address it early on. So
Yeah.
that's one of the ways to do that. Also, dealing with this, get rid of the technology. I mean, as much as possible, I feel like I have some addiction to this stupid technology, and we're always on, we're always getting buzzers and bells and whistles and notifications. Turn those off. Go analog as much as possible. That's something I think is really important, and there's more. So that did that jog anything else?
Yeah, it just reinforced to me that we're all unique and we're different, and we'll have to find our recipe that will help us to deal with this. It reminds me of I guess it was March when we had the Thrive conference, and we asked a question for NSA. What's the biggest thing or most important thing that you've done to build a successful speaking business?
Yeah.
And 44 people there at Thrive recorded videos answering that question, and they gave 24 different answers, like very different answers. And so I think you're right. It's okay probably to experiment a little bit and find out what's going to work for you. So whether it's mountain biking, or whether it's the write and shred method, or
It's just getting
driving
outside
to
and getting that sun.
going for a drive and yelling at the top of your lungs in your car, hopefully with your windows rolled up. Yeah, whatever those things are, you can find those those things. So I appreciate you all sharing those wonderful ideas. How do we keep them from coming back, you know, from resurfacing? Or is it just one of those kind of regular maintenance thing? You're just going to have to purge it. It's like spring cleaning. You just got to do it, on a regular basis. You got to get rid of these things and not feel too bad about yourself if some of these things pop up again.
Well, as long as we're here and living, they're just going to keep coming back up in different layers. And every day we're a different person. So it's a new opportunity to see it in new light, to let go of more. So it's really that continuous. I mean, I imagine that first time I started to look at things, and that shred writing was monumental for me. But doing it daily or every few days for the past 10 years, that's what's made it so that that's what's really given me the power, the real power. And also, just when I listen to what you're saying, Christian, and I love it so much, it just reminds me so much of trust. Like, I know that I'm going to lead myself where I need to go to find relief for the stress. I know that I'm going to be okay and that I'm going to end up getting the answers I need, and to keep following those and trusting that. We have the answers that we need inside, of course. The more I can lean on that and trust that, then I'll keep finding more and more relief, and I just keep showing up for it.
Yeah.
Want to dance.
Right. Christian, I think there also gets to be some acknowledgement that we cause stress for others, those micro stresses. So we're not only receiving them, we're causing them. And as Lindsay said, as long as we're alive, we're going to continue to have them. So gaining the skills to be able to manage them is really important, because unlike regular stress, micro stress kind of flies under the radar. Our brain doesn't detect them, and so it doesn't respond in the normal way of fight or flight with major stresses. And so they're allowed to build up, and it has all kinds of negative impacts. I mean, as I was reading the article, it was really interesting. Even the food that we eat when we have this microstress is not metabolized the same way. If you're having a dinner in a stressful situation, you will actually add, I think it said 110 calories to the meal. So think of, if you're going on a first date, for those of you who are out there, it's like if you go on a lot of first dates and go out to dinner, you're going to gain weight. And so there's all this, it's just going to happen. So we actually have to be aware. And what Lindsay's giving us is so great, is a tool to continually do that if we need to do it. But also recognize that we cause micro stresses. I got this. To me, it's funny. I was actually speaking in San Diego on the stage, and I'm high energy. And some people get a little freaked out by that. Lindsay, I mean, you've been through rapport, and it's pretty intense, right? And
Yeah.
some people love it, but there was a lady on the front row, and during part of my presentation, she goes, "You are stressing me out." I just started laughing. I said, "I am sorry, I'm stressing you." And she had fun. We had fun with it. But have you ever had a situation where somebody is? Well, I'm going to share a situation. Like, my wife is frustrated with me, and so she says something in a frustrated, and I say, "Stop yelling at me," or you know, I'm yelling back, or I'm stressed back, and like, we are causing stress on each other all the time. So instead of, one of the things I try to do, and I've been really practicing this, if I'm frustrated by something that somebody else is saying, I do not return that frustration in my response. I actually have to practice, just in my own mind, just taking a breath and let go, and remember, I love this person. Let me show that in how I respond, even though I'm feeling that stress, because I don't want to create that ripple effect going forward, because that's something I can very easily do. And I'm going to share one more idea. So I have a client that I'm coaching, Lindsay, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And he is so dedicated, so company man. He's not married, doesn't have any children. His whole life is the job. And he's a regional manager, and he feels anxiety all the time. Why? Because his entire thought is about work, is about his team, is about the problems, is about, what other people at work think about him, about, the changes that are happening. His whole world is work. And so that actually builds up stress and anxiety. And so one of my suggestions to him was, you need to be involved in, because he's active in his church. You need to be going out more with your church. You need to find, he loves gardening. Get together with people who do gardening. Find something outside. He's, well, I don't want to spend any money. There are organizations, there are groups, there are Facebook pages that you can just go and find like-minded people to talk about things that don't have to do with work. Just to be, people can cause stress, but people can also help you to relax. And so being around other people, whether you're exercising together or you're part of a group of like-minded people, that helps take your mind off of some of those things that might normally cause stress. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love what you told him. And I'm still thinking about how the more I let go, the more weight I might lose and be even healthier. But that was a good one, Spencer.
Well,
Just
it even changes how we metabolize healthy food. Apparently, it turns it into. I didn't even realize that. So, good food that you eat when you're stressed, actually, your body is interpreting it as bad food. And I didn't even know our minds could do that, but apparently they can. And that's based on some of this research from this article. It just blew my mind.
That's so hopeful to me. I'm like, we have so much control over this stuff. It's not controlling us. It's so cool.
Right.
One thing it makes me think about with your friend is when we're stressed, it's this natural human tendency to just put all of our efforts and attention there. And we just keep getting more of the same, right? Our efforts are on the stress and we get more stress. And it's so counterintuitive, but sometimes I'll tell myself, like, all right, I'm just gonna go enjoy my kids and just be with them, even though there's a pile high of things to do. Or it's those little teeny things like just listening to what a child will say, or feeling like the grass on my feet, or the feel of the sheets when I get into bed. Like really noticing those feelings and just letting them wash over you. The stress washes away. It's so not what I would have ever thought, but you're totally right with that balance, bringing other things in, peaceful things, leaning into those. Suddenly, these other problems with work that I'm not focusing on, I find solutions because
You
I'm
are
attracting this joyful feeling, right?
and you are absolutely doing that. And you're also doing something else, which is you were saying, well, I just need to put aside that job and spend time with my kids. What happens sometimes is we are working under that stress and we actually are less and less effective. So we may be working more and more and more, but our brains aren't working. We're not even aware of it. Our ability to think clearly is diminished. And so we are working longer hours to get less and less done. And just by taking that break, by focusing on something else, we're actually replenishing our brain power, our energy, so that when we do come back to the problem, we have more energy, more clarity, more focus to get it done in less time anyway. So it's not even
Yes.
effective to work longer. Stop that, come back, you'll get more done in less time because you have felt the grass on your feet and you will be replenished.
That you need to do your little dancing. That is amazing. That is taken so.
That was a little different dance.
I have to say, my son is very good at that. One thing he's really, really good at is time management, and ever he started this actually when he was back in high school because he loves spreadsheets. So he'd make this spreadsheet, and he would say, "Okay, I've got my time to do this," but he wouldn't give himself like a 10-minute break or a 20-minute break. He would give himself like a 2-hour break or something like, "Okay, I'm going to do this, and then for 2 hours." I'm just going to go play video games with my friend and we're going to have a great time. And then I'm going to come back to this. So he always made sure that he gave himself ample time. He's like, oh, I'm not going to work for an hour and then take 5 minutes and then, study for another 2 hours and then take 10 minutes. No, I'm going to study hard for an hour or two. And then I'm going to take 1 or 2 hours. And he's really, really good at that. I want to come back to something, Lindsay, that you said about trusting in yourself. I find that a really, really interesting concept. I've done a lot of interviews for people. That's one of the things that I've done for a living is interview people to capture their stories, to share their experiences, whether it's personal or whether it's in a professional setting. And sometimes they are a little bit unsure of themselves going in. They're a little nervous about it. And so I try to reassure them, say, hey, this isn't a test. It's not a performance. You're not trying to get nominated for an Oscar here. But the most important thing is what we're here to talk about is your experience, and you are the expert of your experience. You know more about your experience than anybody else, so you can take comfort in that. And so I really like this idea of actually building up this trust in yourself. I can do this, and so I'm curious how you do that, whether it's through having the conversation like, hey man, I'm just on the roller coaster of life and I'm just enjoying this up and down thing, or what I was doing with interviewees, trying to comfort them and just giving them a different perspective that, hey, don't worry, you don't have to, don't be on pins and needles. It's totally cool, and you're among friends here. How did you go about actually building this trust in yourself to say, hey, you know what? I got this. It's not easy, but we're going to get through this and we're going to make it happen.
I love that you value people's stories so much and pointing that out to them, that it's not about an Oscar. We all have this piece inside of us that I know we've all felt. You can call it your higher self, your this really brilliant self, smart self. It's like that is who, when we can let go, right? And we go outside, we let go and go do some fun things. Uh, we can feel those ideas come in, inspirations come in when we can trust that we're not in charge of figuring out the whole world, right? The world, it's been going for so long, it's going to keep taking care of itself. But that we get to live, we get to be free, we get to hand the stress off and trust that if there's something we need to know, that high self of us, I call my high self, will let us know and will lead us. And I tell myself, my highest self is always leading me where I want to go. And I keep finding that. And we know those feelings and we follow them. And there's really so much less that we have to do than I ever thought. You know, we're meant to live joyfully. We're not meant to carry these huge weights, these huge burdens. Let it go. Get it out of your mind, get it out and walk away from it. I've been amazed the things we can let go of. And then that creates space for the possibility. And that's what we're talking about with trusting ourselves in that open space, following those things, and we'll get better, bigger places than we even imagined.
That's I love that, and I feel like we are built to carry and accomplish great things. Yet when we're holding on to so much in our mind space, we actually don't have the energy or the ability to do all those things that we were meant to do because we're holding on to so much that is not productive. Is kind of what I interpreted. I know we're
Yep.
kind of getting towards the end, but I have some questions from some folks on LinkedIn, and Awana Blankenship. I'm just going to read her her question here. Teamwork. So this is the teamwork podcast, and what do you do when all who are present struggle to try to become part of the team and are shuffled to the side at every turn? Owana, I'm not really sure about what's going on, but it sounds like there's two things. People are struggling individually to feel part of a team, and secondly, maybe they're being pushed to the side and not made to feel part of the team. Anything coming up for either of you in that comment? Can't hear you, Christian. Sorry.
I muted myself there. Somebody came in the door and was making some noise. Anyway, I would say I would start out with just acknowledging what our good friend Dr. Paul Jenkins says is you're perfectly right to feel what you're feeling. Right. So don't feel any guilt or anything. They're like, why am I feeling this way? You're feeling that way for a reason. I don't know what the specifics are there, but I would start there by saying, hey, it's okay to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I would hand over here to the undisputed queen of microstress over here, Lindsay, to give more salient advice. But I think it's important for everybody to recognize up front that you know, don't don't beat yourself over the head. You know, if you're feeling the way you're feeling that for a reason, and you're justified in those feelings. And then, you know, what do you do about that is the next step in the process.
Yeah. I totally agree. I picture this, we're going about in our lives and at our work, and there's so much you can do, right? I Without the specifics, I picture it like, have you anyone seen that picture of Moses, like he's parting the Red Sea, the sea is shooting up on the sides, and you are walking down the center and you are focused on serving and your values and whatever's the very most important to you in your job. And the things that are happening on the side, the water shooting up, being chased behind you, those things will keep happening. And as you're driven in your focus, if the things that are happening aren't aligned with you, then that's a whole other conversation. But that has brought me a lot of peace because the team, so much I can do in my own power to not take that on, to keep it feeling positive and at a healthy environment.
Great. I think that it's got to start at the top. There's got to be awareness that leadership has of the impact that they have. And I talk about impact all the time. If leaders are not aware of that, then there needs to be some help. And sometimes there needs to be enough pain. You talked about pain earlier, Lindsay. Sometimes there's pain and people leave the organization. And if that doesn't jolt leadership into saying, hey, I need to take a look at myself and be aware of how I'm bringing people, instead of putting them to the side, making them feel part of the team. One simple thing a leader can do is sit down with people and ask them, what what would help you to feel more part of this team, and to hear from them. And it just takes care, right? And we, part of eliminating some of these micro stresses is realizes that we all have difficult lives. And as management is one of the most noble professions ever. Why? Because of the impact that we have, not only on someone's profession, but on their whole life. People can come to work and be miserable, or they can love it and look forward to it. That's our responsibility when it comes to team, is to make people feel like they're part of something and that they're important. And that takes time and connections, and to build on your word, Lindsay, trust. And that starts at the top. And when you do that, I think when we just start treating people like they're important to us and that we care about them, we want to know what's important to them so that we can help align their values to our organization. And if they're not aligned, it might be a great thing for them to leave, but help them to find where they are aligned. Couple more comments from
Hey, just one
LinkedIn.
more thing very quickly on that, Spencer. I think that's great if you're the leader of the team. I gather from Moana's comment that perhaps she's a member of the team, maybe not the leader. So what do you do in that instance where you are a member of a team and you're feeling this sense of frustration? You don't feel empowered. What can you do aside from what you said, Lindsay, which is kind of focus on yourself and just take care of yourself and the things that you can control. But is there an opportunity? I guess it would really depend on the team itself. But is there an opportunity to kind of raise a concern tactfully with the leader? Because sometimes the leader is not aware. I mean, I've been in that
And
situation
that
before where
depends, Christian.
someone came up and told me something, and I'm like, really? I had no idea that was happening. I didn't know that was going on. Well, we'll take measures to correct that. Um, and and sometimes we're afraid. We're like, well, what happens if I go? I raise my voice. I raise a concern. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be put on even less meaningful or more meaningless assignments because I'm a troublemaker and I'm drama? Those are kind of things you got to work through as a team member if you're not the leader.
I absolutely think that is a problem, and I think with Lindsay's ideas, that's going to be working on their own stress, right? And before we go, I want to give us an example of how to write a shred a journal entry, if you will. But we can only control what we can control, and some organizations, the trust doesn't exist for them to address, or they just don't feel that comfort. Well, what choices do you have? You can stay and suffer, or talk to them. And I mean, there's not a lot of great options, and that's why I'm saying it's got to start at the top. Uh,
Yeah.
or you can hire Lindsay. Just call her and say, "Hey, what can I, what can I do?"
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You said there were a couple of other questions, Spencer. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I'm sorry.
No, here's a couple of comments. So Mitchell was talking about your roller coaster comment, Lindsay. He's Mitchell Crocker, who says there's nervousness and fear for some before getting on the roller coaster. Even some people don't even want to get on it. What would you say to that?
Yeah, those feelings, who's to say those are bad? It's kind of a fun feeling, right? The anticipation, here we go. And when I'm feeling nervous, I'll be like, isn't this a feeling? I gotta feel this in life. Wow, like where is it gonna take me? I'm not gonna die. And then you go on the roller coaster and it's joyful and crazy. And I love thinking about that, the anticipation before.
And then just Carla Klein from Quebec. I think that's where she is. she just says, great suggestion, disconnecting from technology to give ourselves some space to breathe and rest. So we always appreciate when our listeners comment live, and sorry I didn't get those a little more timely. So we're running out of time, Christian. I would love to hear an example of just. I know you shared how you did it, but what can we do to use this methodology to just let go of that stress? I mean, how do we begin to journal? What do we do?
I can tell you super quickly. Get out a piece of paper. If you want the black book that has the prompts that have been proven to work, you can use that, or paper, and ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now? What am I pushing away? What am I fearing? And something will come up. Sometimes we even do this live on podcasts. We won't today. And then just you set the timer for 10 minutes and you free write. There's absolutely no judgment, no spelling. Just write, let it all flow, get it out of your mind, scribble it out. All the things that you're scared of that you feel like maybe you shouldn't say, anything that comes up. Your mind will know what needs to be said, right? Trusting yourself again. And a lot of people say they're shocked how much is already on the surface, ready to be said. You get it all out when your timer beeps after 10 minutes. You breathe deeply. You trust that your mind is letting go, your body, your heart are letting go, and you tear it into teeny little pieces, and you breathe, and you throw it all away. And you walk away and you trust that that is processing and is done, and that you've let go. And you will feel the grip of that stress and that experience loosen, because the fear is what has the tension, the pressure, the stress. That is what makes stress so heavy, the pushing, the pressure, the fear, the not looking at it. When you free that, there is nothing there anymore except lightness and space.
Well, Lindsay, it sounds to me like we've just scratched the surface on things that people can do and ways that you can help them to overcome these stresses and really find this balanced, joyful life. If people want to learn more, they want to connect with you to figure out, what they should be doing or how you might be able to help them. What's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
Yeah, just check out Lindsay V, LYNDSEYV.com, or Lindsay V on social media, and love to connect. I come into businesses and we go to powerful places.
And Spencer, you do so much work with teams. You've done it for decades, helping teams improve their performance. If people want to learn how they can help their teams become high-performing teams, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Just reach out to me on LinkedIn, say hi, and we
All
will
right.
talk. Christian, no, you don't go without telling them how they get a hold of Raconto.
Same, LinkedIn,
I
it's
feel
easy.
like that's a way to shred through Raconto.
Yeah. For someone like me who doesn't like to write, maybe I could just record all my frustrations and then delete it. I don't know. Maybe I'll give that a shot. I'll try that.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to connect with anybody. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just look up Christian Napier and be honored to connect with you all. So listeners, viewers, thank you so much for your participation today. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you again soon. Lindsay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.